Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting conversation as part of the Sherpa Success Navigator interview series. An interview series where we bring you exclusive conversations with top HR and tech leaders across APAC and discuss some of the findings of the global Sherpa State of the HR Industry report. Today we have with us Eugene Lam, Senior VP HR at ST Engineering. It's great to have you with us, Eugene.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I'm very happy to be here.
Great, great. So, for our listeners out there, our conversation today is really going to be anchored around two broad topics. One is how can HR really look at building a sustainable HR technology framework and strengthen its implementation entering 2025. And the other aspect that we're going to look at closely is improving HR's own effectiveness in leveraging technology and really delivering business impact. So with it, Eugene, let me just dive straight into my first question. One of the findings that we had from the global, Sherpa report was aspects like leveraging analytics and improving talent management through AI and HR tech at large still remains a problem across major regions in APAC, and if I had to magnify in Southeast Asia as well. Uh, why do you see this problem, persist across maybe different regions in APAC? And what are some technology implementation journeys that are on your radar where you would want to invest and where you would want companies to really look at in 2025?
Right, right. Well, that's it's an interesting observation because data analytics, big data, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm trying to recall now, trends that came through the HR community, right? I think at one time it was topical on workforce management, and then big data came about, analytics. And then, of course, in more recent times, it was around, DEI matters, AI, and so on, right? Digitization in the last couple of years, and so on. So it's interesting that this has come up. I think one of the challenges is really the maturity of countries within the APAC region. And
Yeah.
then again, it's also made uh, quite, if I may say, right, you have to weave in a few considerations. Firstly, the organizations you are in, where you sit in today in each region, because I've seen different organizations also have different investments that they have put into technology and HR technology.
Right.
And so that enables you to have a different view altogether. Right? Also, in some other organizations, these investments are not cheap. And as you know, in the last couple of years, with how the economy was with inflation and all that,
Right.
tech investments, although it always sounds, things to look at and so on, these things do cost money for the business. And then you've got to ask the question, right, whether how much ROI are you going to to get, right,
Right.
in these investments? And these are quite long-term investments. So I suspect it's a fine balance of how much investments companies have put in to enable this technology. The other is also, I think, just if you look at APAC, right, we are quite an interesting bundle of countries. Again,
Right.
depending on the industry and which company you sit in, you will have, if I may use the word, different sophistication, right, as to the use of these tools and what you look at. And also, largely, is also the size of the company. I mean, I
Right.
guess in our audience today, you got a very wide range. Those with 10,000 and above, you get a level of maturity where you need tools to run organizations. But organizations that are smaller, their investments obviously be a bit more humble, and obviously, therefore, you get a wide range of views on this. But I think central at the core, uh, analytics is one area that you cannot ignore, right?
Right.
Because that obviously provides us insights, and obviously it helps business and HR to make good decisions. I think going to 2025, again, I think it's also a question of investments, and companies are going to be also contemplating, right, their business strategy, and we are very aware of geopolitical situations that's around the world, and also with AI and there's the shift of AI to even what they call digital sovereignty, right? Where countries are now stepping in to try to
Right,
regulate
right.
and so on. So there are a lot of these factors, and I think while that's an important consideration, it's something companies will have to watch, and obviously running their financials and their performance would be key.
Right, right, right. You mentioned, 2025 coming with those considerations, but on the other hand, we are seeing, from a tech advancement standpoint, Gen AI, I mean, it's already entered the picture over the past maybe couple of years, and now there's this entire conversation of agentic AI and humans really working together. Um, how do you see HR really being able to, leverage AI as a powerful tool? Do you still see it in a very use case by case implementation stage, or do you see AI becoming an indispensable part of HR moving ahead?
Yeah, I think, look, today, if you see how AI is being used, right? And it's interesting, if you put questions, and we sort of adopt Copilot here. So,
Okay.
I mean, the possibilities and the opportunities are so wide. We're sort of just scratching the surface,
Right.
and I think it's still sort of, it's talked a lot about, I guess in the last 1 2 years, the momentum has
Right.
picked up. But if you have not really actually adopted it, you may not see so much of its potential. But for me, it's really about data, access to data, quick access, right? And again, data is in itself is just data, right? But
Right.
it's data that matters, that will make some impact to business. And sometimes these knowledge base, I realize, it will give you information that it's quick, right?
Right.
And as HR leaders start to expand its responsibilities, and as we progress within HR, you realize you start to get into different sphere about the business, about financials and how we run our business. And some of these things don't come naturally to HR community. And
Right.
I tell you what, AI has been amazing, right? I could just put in an information um, and like shadow P&L, right? One of my staff was asking, you just go to you're sitting in a business review and they talk about shadow P&L, right? Interesting. You just go AI and you just ask, what the hell is that, right? And
Right. Right.
and it's important, right? Because we are intricate part of the business, right? And sometimes there are things, there are not everything that we would be aware and know. And so I found it to be really useful source, but I think its potential is yet to be fully reaped, because again, depending on your company and how much investments you have put in, not
Right.
all HR professionals, right, will get to really experience this and its potentials. Yeah.
Right. So I think we will touch upon what HR maybe needs to do better to sort of leverage that potential, as you say. A lot of potential is untapped. But going back to that investment aspect, Eugene, what the report really found, and it was interesting in a way, was we know in APAC, especially in Southeast Asia, India, these regions. Attracting, hiring the right talent and retaining the right talent, it's a top business priority. But when it comes to really investing in technology solutions in these regions, we actually saw HR leaders saying they're reprioritizing their investments in these regions. In fact, in Southeast Asia, we saw companies reporting around 21% companies saying that they're going to reduce the investments that are going into attracting the right talent, especially from a technology standpoint. Do you see maybe similar trend in your work, and how do you think investments can really be driven purposefully in 2025?
Yeah. I think, um, I think we have to go back to first principles, right? And you heard me share earlier about the business.
Yeah.
And one core thing I've learned over the years that is that, if you look at other functions like finance and all that, it's very intuitive, right? You
Yeah.
share a P&L and you can straight away, if you look at it and you're good enough at it, you understand where the challenges are and what you need to go after. With HR is an interesting one, right? Employee engagement. You
Right.
talk about attrition. Just pick up some of the basic things, right? I've also found uh, business, right? And it's I guess our role to better articulate this, right? But how does all that sort of lead to our bottom line? And as we all are aware, we sort of came out of COVID, right? And many organizations and industry, and I mentioned about geopolitical issues, um,
Right.
it's going to impact businesses in general, right? The competition will change, and I still remember the earlier years where the competition was among just the Western organizations and so on, and later on, wow, the rise of the BRIC countries, right? If you look at India, China, so this evolution has really started to change, and of course, in the last couple of years, is the rise of the disruptors, right? No more the
Right.
big giants from these companies, but companies that just come in and disrupt, right? Startups and so the landscape has changed so much. And so coming back to this question, right? I mean, businesses are thinking, right? What's really the ROI? I'll pick you an example. In one of my previous roles, we were trying to harmonize payroll,
Right.
um, right? Just payroll platform, just across Asia Pacific, right? Let's not talk globally because I don't know if there's a service provider that, but even then, right? We had
Right.
very difficult conversations with the business. Intuitively, you talk to a HR practitioner, well, it's no brainer, right? Of course, we should just get one platform. You got to consider, ease of use and employee experience, compliance, and so on. But to a business leader, I'll just pick one, right? The
Right.
country managing director of Vietnam. He says, well, I'm using a software that costs me 500 US dollars a month. Now you have this very sophisticated that you're trying to, but sorry, I have to pay now three times the cost. Why? Because that impacts my P&L, right? I mean, it's good for all the right reasons, but obviously, so what I'm saying is I think for HR leaders in the community, we need to be very sensitized, right? Where some of these things always sound good, and if there's truly a business case, then we need to well articulate, so how does that impact the business, right?
Right.
How does this data, what is it going to make a difference, right? That it's going to help my business and my talent and my culture. So I think those are the considerations that you can't, and every organization has its own context and its own, and you can't have a one size because it always sounds good, right? Let's introduce, but well, firstly, where's the problem statement, right? What are
Right.
you
Right.
really trying to solve? So I think it's going back to some of these fundamentals. And of course, HR folks will say easy access, quick and all, but some business leaders may say, well, for three times the cost, I think I'm okay. You guys still working on this Excel, it's okay.
Right. Right. Right.
So I think
I
those
and I
things we can't, sort of ignore. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you highlight a very important aspect where, ROI, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's a conversation that's been on for a couple of years, but with each new technology that enters the market, the conversation of ROI is never far behind. Like even
Yes.
with Gen AI applications, even with, advanced analytics,
Yeah.
the question of ROI is not far behind.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think now, to be fair, I guess this is, I suppose, one view. But yeah, there are organizations that are obviously early adopters and they embrace these things, right? And they feel these investments are important. But it's just an important point that we need to consider, right?
Yeah.
Because these things are not cheap. I mean, you talked about talent acquisition, recruitment. I mean, it's interesting. I was introduced to gamification and some of these new tools that are out there to quicken, your assessment and your selection. And yeah, contextually, some of it makes sense, right? Because some organization hire, for example, college, university grads in the droves, right? Huge numbers. So
Right.
those things will make a lot of sense, right? But if you're hiring sort of 50 a year, I'm not sure if I will,
Right.
So again, a lot of it is we just got to be sensitized as to, there are great things, as we say, there are great HR practices out there. But
Right.
once you overlay that with the context of your organization, it's still great, but maybe not yet, that kind of thing. So we just
Right.
need to be very mindful of business. And I suppose as HR leaders, I've learned to it's about this thing about business case, right? So if it's
Right.
that important, if you're that convinced, how do you tell your story, right? Why that's going to make a difference? Yeah.
Right. I think so. One of the things that the this Sherpa State of the HR Industry study did was it also spoke with HR tech leaders and HR tech tech evangelists and talent consultants to take like a 360-degree view. And hearing from them, what the report saw is that their role is also going to change. They need to be better at enabling HR to create that, business, that story of impact. How do you see their role really evolving in maybe in the coming months?
Yeah, I always think about this as a parallel between HR and our business partners who support the business, right? We always say that, hey, look, what makes a great HR business partner, and those who I suppose have been exposed realize that just knowing the business and understanding and having that kind of acumen, right, is going to make you more effective. I say the same
Right.
about HR tech, right? I suppose if you understand enough some of these nuances and what the business really likes to appreciate, right? And what technology can help us enable that. And I think that would be tremendous, because business leaders are, obviously they are also very talent savvy, right? And
Right.
most often times when you get the conversations about employee engagement, employee experience, and so on, right? Oftentimes, yes, I do see leaders ask, obviously, for more insights, right? I think that's the key word, right? And if
Right.
HR tech can allow that, and not just say, hey, look, we got a flurry of tools. These are great, right? Just use them. You can see all this, but it's meaningful insights. I think insights that matter. Then, wow, you will become very relevant, right? And obviously, that's going to be a big impact, right? If
Right.
you
Right. Right.
understand, yeah, how the business partners work and what businesses are looking at when they use the word insights, right? Because that's what tech is all about, right? Is enabling us to get some of those deep insights. You know.
Right. Thank you for that, Eugene. And I think your point slightly. I mean, it echoes what the shift in the role of an HR tech partner or a tech leader that we've also seen from at one point just being an implementation partner to now working with HR leaders, working with CIOs, technology officers and other CXOs, especially the CEO, of course, to really help HR shape that narrative, whether it's an investment to improve experience and looking at those slightly intangible aspects also. So thank you for that. I think now we'll shift slightly and look at HR's effectiveness, because what we did in the report was, besides just looking at technology implementation journeys and maybe investment gaps, what we also found was HR's own effectiveness and HR's own skill being a concern for HR leaders across the region. So, for example, in Southeast Asia, we saw somewhere around 57% of HR leaders saying that they really want to focus on their own effectiveness, improving functional skills, improving tech skills in the next coming 12 to 18 months. If you had to look at it from a skilling standpoint, as an HR for HR standpoint, what are some areas that you think HR should maybe really look at, improving its ability across? And personally, if you had to see, the next 12 to 18 months, what are some ways that HR can really build those skills?
Okay. This reminds me, of the journey and the development of a very, I suppose, a effective HR business partner, right? And one of the things you can hear me quite passionate about is, just HR leaders with good I would say like business acumen, right? Just understanding the business, the financials. Well,
Right.
we're moving into the digital age, right? And with AI and so on, I think now it's a bit of a shift for HR folks to get to understand better technology. And I think there are a few aspects there, right? One is it's understanding what's out there today because obviously today there's machine learning, there's generative AI. How do you sort of distinguish? I think it's going back down to basics, right? How do you distinguish digitization and how does AI come? And there are different facets or domains. Firstly, I think it's
Right.
getting down to understand that. The other then is, of course, a way to find out, hey, what are companies doing out there? I've always found it interesting to see companies who have adopted it and found it to be a huge impact, right? Because those are
Right.
really quick learnings, right? And I think that's the other way to do it. And of course, finally, then the reflection, right, about your own organization, about your own business, and looking at what it is today, where it's moving to, what companies are adopting, what are good practices out there. How does that sort of help your business, right? What investments should we put forward really to take us to the next level? So I think there are a couple of opportunities here for our HR community to sort of, just put their hands in, right? Because
Definitely.
obviously
Definitely.
AI is here to stay, and it will obviously change a lot of how we do things going forward.
Yeah. And just staying on this point for a second, Eugene,
Yeah.
do you see the skill set or the requirement from a CHRO also evolve? The expectations and the mindset and the behavior and the aptitude required from a CHRO also evolve due to external disruptive changes?
Yeah, that's always an interesting one, because at the end of it, I say yes, I think so. I was reflecting again, my time in earlier organizations, and I was looking at one of the organizations that I worked in, right, a tech organization, that every 2 3 years, right, it changes leadership competencies. Very interesting.
Right.
Right, and there was one era where it was all about globalization and ensuring, business leaders understand what that means. And then after 2 3 years, I remember it shifted to big data, and then a
Right.
couple of years later on digitization and technology and AI. So these are interesting shifts. Now, if that is sort of what's expected of business leaders, what more for CHROs, right? I
Right.
think we I suppose I'm Gen X, so I've probably seen quite evolution of the business and how HR has evolved in terms of our competencies and expectations, right, out of HR. So yeah, I think being digitally savvy is not one we can ignore. So I think you're right. CHROs have to move into that because with AI digitization comes a lot of other implications that could be new to many of us. Data privacy, right? And if you're running global businesses, personal information and implications on certain markets that you will have. Sometimes it sounds like a good thing, but there are
Right.
limitations and restrictions, right? So, and as you know, today we're the European community is moving a lot very
Right.
quickly on sustainability and human rights, and so yeah, we
Right.
just have to keep evolving. I think our rules will have to keep changing, and yeah, we have to get on top of some of these things, right? That's coming up.
Right, right. That actually brings me to my final question, Eugene. You sort of enumerated those shifts that are happening externally, be it from a global standpoint or be it from region-specific market standpoint. Um, Agility and resilience, they've become keywords for HR to sort of like embrace and ensure their workforce is agile and also resilient. From a 2025 standpoint, again, looking at the year, we are at January. If you had to maybe look at the year, how do you see HR really enabling workforce agility in the coming few months? And what are some practices that you think are really necessary for HR leaders to begin really implementing from an agility standpoint?
Right, right. So one of the roles I've seen remain important over the years is this whole realm on, organizational development and organizational effectiveness. And I say that because, companies are rethinking their I suppose their business model, for that matter, their strategy, given all the macro issues. They're relooking at markets and so on. And that means I think HR leaders need to understand quite deeply, right, what this whole domain on org development and org effectiveness is about, right? Because
Right.
that really encompasses how organizations are structured, the capabilities within an organization, and then the things that follow, the practices, the processes, the way we reward people, and those elements, right, actually helps to enable a company, right?
Right.
And I think that going into this year, I think it continues to be an important element, and these are not skills that I've learned over the years that's easily picked up, right?
Right.
Example, a business leader comes to you and say, "Hey, look, I'm thinking of making changes in our lines of business, right? And there's certain markets we need to go after, certain areas we need to. How do you think we should construct this, right? um, uh, to tackle a bigger global market, and also what capabilities do you think we need?" Those are the questions that are really relevant, right? And I've learned over the years that it's not an easy space to pick up. Oftentimes, you get consultants coming in helping you to do these things, but uh, I think that remains to be an important one for us to develop, right? Because your business leaders are going through these changes, right?
Yeah.
And on the area of helping workforce agility, right? The other area that comes quite quickly after this is on just helping companies manage transition. Well, they used to call it change management, right?
Right. Right.
Who moved my cheese, or who moved my mouse, or whatever, right? But again, right, a very important area, because workforce agility is really about helping your employees, your managers, and your business leaders. Oh, by the way, your business leaders, some of them are also quite new to this, right? What does it mean to
Right.
reorganize, move an organization, communicate, sometimes make very difficult decisions, right? When it comes to change, it relates to
Yeah.
people, right? And
Right.
so I think it's this other skill that's important to guide your managers, your leaders, and also um, in that way also help your employee, right, your workforce go through that change. Because today that's sort of it's even more important, right, this whole thing about change, and
Right.
how do we help employees, right, go through the experience, right, because it's never comfortable. So it's a skill that HR needs to, I suppose, take a few steps back, look at that, and yeah, give good advice to our business leaders and help your employees and your managers transition through all these changes. Yeah.
Right, right. It's lovely that you sort of highlight the aspect of change, because agility is definitely linked to enabling workforces, organizations deal with that change. The report also found a interesting gap, like what HR leaders say in terms of their readiness and their preparedness. They were ready for change. They were ready to adapt newer technologies and those things, but when it came to execution, when it came to really leading the workforce through that transition period, that's where we saw a lot of dissatisfaction level across different parameters. So I think that gap also is slightly highlighted. It's echoing in what you're also mentioning.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. And it's an interesting one. So whenever I think about learning and development, and how do we develop a workforce, right? Yeah, obviously the business leaders will say, hey, we need stronger technical skills, sales
Right.
skills, and go to market and all that. I think we often also forget, how do we um, help to shape our workforce, right? Our individual contributors, our managers, right? How do we help them to manage change? because they are going to be part, part of that wave, right? And if
Right,
you
right,
don't know how to manage that, then I think it's tricky, right? Because what will happen then is, yeah, you get a lot of turnover, you get a lot of churn, you get low engagement, and because I guess we've not helped them to manage that themselves.
right,
It's interesting because also today when I interview candidates, right, I mean, uh, one of the um, competencies I sort of look at is how an individual has managed change in their career. Because
right.
hey, you're going to be experienced that again and again, right? And But I think, yeah, equally is important. We need to actually carry our workforce and our employees and help them understand, right? That's the world today, and how can you lead yourself better?
Great, great. Thank you for that, Eugene. I am done with my questions, but given that this is, looking at 2025 as a year where HR can create more business impact, is there any other closing sentiment that you would want to share with our audience?
Okay, I think I suppose for HR, I would just say, look, we have to keep ourselves relevant, even for myself, because remember a lot of these things that came up today, right? Uh, in AI, in digitization, and all that. These were not areas that when I was growing up as a HR leader that was
Right,
familiar, right? I mean, a lot of these things are also new, and I try and make time to investigate, talk to peers
right,
out there, especially those in tech companies who have embraced some of this, and learn, right? I think it's all about, learning that and picking these new skills, and also reflecting that on your own business and how you can be relevant and continue to make a difference to your business.
great. Thank you for joining us, Eugene.
Sure.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.